Within a five-star luxury hotel in Yuncheng, a woman was just stepping out of a steamy shower, as a man in the room vowed to finally make her Jiayao his own, though his plans were suddenly interrupted by a sharp knock at the door and he called out coming, with clear annoyance in his voice, revealing a young food delivery driver standing just outside, and as this man opened the door he immediately recognized the driver, just as Jiayao emerged accusing the poor driver of having taken her clothes, which caused the delivery bag to drop to the floor with a loud bang, and the other man to explode with rage at the driver. But then she called out for her honey, stunning both of the men, while her lover just smirked mocking her for having such a useless husband, and a memory flashed through his mind of 3 long years spent in a thankless marriage, prompting him to ask how she could possibly betray him like this. But her answer was cold and simple: it was because he's a useless delivery guy. And she began to boast about her new man Fang Ko, who was a wealthy heir. So Fang Ko then demanded he kneel and apologize just for a good review, but our boy Yi Chen refused to bow down to their utter shamelessness. So Fang Ko simply dismissed him, turning his back to Wang Jiayao, but Yi Chen's hand shot out like lightning, grabbing his wrist hard, and she screamed, "Yi Chen, let go," daring him to actually start a fight, threatening to call security, but he could only see her stinging betrayal. Remembering the day his own grandfather had arranged their marriage, and how he once dreamed of building a happy life with her, but now he just hoped she wouldn't come to regret her choice. As his wife called him nothing more than a useless husband, he found himself riding his scooter through the city streets, when a call came in during the middle of his delivery route, and a voice on the other end informed him his 3-year training period was finally over. That his next mission was to become the chairman of a major corporation. And when asked about his wife, he declared she simply isn't worthy of him, then sped away on his scooter, leaving his entire old life behind. Later that night, his wife finally returned to their home, only to find him in the middle of packing a suitcase, and she scoffed at him, saying he lives off her family and must obey their rules, which made his hand tighten on the handle of the suitcase, as he finally unleashed 3 years of silent pent-up suffering, explaining that he endured it all for her but he wouldn't do it anymore. And he looked directly at Wang Jiayao and demanded a divorce, leaving her completely stunned that Yi Chen would ever dare to ask for one. So she threatened him with a life of poverty, but he no longer cared, and she finally agreed, calling him worthless and completely unworthy. But she delayed the process, citing her grandmother's upcoming birthday party, so Yi Chen just told her to call him whenever she was ready, and she threw a glass against the wall, screaming that he'll come crawling back to her. But outside, his phone began to ring again, as a luxury car was waiting for him in the pouring rain, and soon an entire fleet of cars arrived to greet the young master, where a bodyguard offered him an umbrella but he simply refused, letting the cold rain wash over him, clearing his mind of the past, while a man in a trench coat gave the order for the fleet to move, and a line of Rolls Royces cut through the rain-slick streets, as onlookers were stunned by the incredible display of wealth. And a red-haired woman wondered if some big shot had arrived in the city. While inside one of the cars, the man sat with a cold, determined expression, for he was from the Yi family, a secret and immense global power, and a helicopter was already waiting for the young master. You see, the heirs of his family must endure brutal training from a young age, as the elders give them special trials designed to build their character, and a flashback revealed his grandfather's command from 3 years ago, when Yi Chen was ordered to marry into a lesser family as a final test. A trial that he accepted of his own free will. But now that difficult life was finally over, for Yi Chen had returned to his true home at last. The next morning, the Wang family was gathered to celebrate a birthday, and old Madame Wang asked where the useless Yi Chen was, so his wife Jiayao quickly claimed he had gone to work, while 2 other relatives, Wang Yuan and Wang Xiaojai, mocked his delivery job, which made the matriarch explode, demanding he be brought to her immediately. But Jiayao calmly announced to everyone that they were getting a divorce. And this old woman was furious because the marriage had been arranged by her late husband, so Jiayao spun a terrible lie accusing Yi Chen of cheating on her, which sent old Madame Wang into a rage over the supposed betrayal, and a male relative cruelly taunted Jiayao about their chaste, unconsummated marriage. But the matriarch's fury was fixed entirely on Yi Chen alone. Just then a call came in from Wang Jiayao, and Yi Chen answered, his voice completely cold, as she summoned him to her grandma's birthday party. But he refused and hung up on her instantly, leaving Wang Jiayao furious at his sudden disrespect. So she told the matriarch, who just scoffed at his incredible nerve, and a cousin, Wang Xiaoji, eagerly volunteered to go and fetch him, as the rest of the family gathered anticipating a dramatic confrontation. Then the matriarch began an important announcement, explaining that the powerful Huisheng group had a new unknown chairman, and their family's massive business deal with them now hung in the balance. Elsewhere, a subordinate was addressing a young master. It was Yi Chen, still in his delivery uniform, playing the long game, when his phone rang again, and it was Wang Xiaoji, and his cousin demanded his location, feigning a friendly chat, while Xiaoji smirked, his true malicious intentions perfectly clear, as a luxury car aggressively cut off Yi Chen's scooter, and Xiaoji ordered him to get into the car, but Yi Chen simply stated the divorce was happening no matter what they did. Though Xiaoji clarified that this was not a negotiation, and accused Yi Chen of cheating, a crime against the entire family. So Yi Chen took off his helmet, a small knowing smile playing on his lips, as he laughed at the completely ridiculous accusation, but then his expression turned to solid ice, leaving Shaoji stunned by the sudden terrifying shift in his demeanor. Just then a man in a vest stepped out of the car furious and threw a heavy punch at our boy, but the delivery driver was much faster, landing a powerful kick. And the stunned man pulled out a knife, lunging wildly, but the driver easily evaded the attack as the blade was stopped dead in its tracks, and a brutal counterpunch followed immediately after, and he told him he was no longer the Wang family's dog, that from now on he would make his own choices, and the defeated man could only sputter threats as the driver walked away. Meanwhile, back at the Wanhao Hotel, old Madame Wang arrived with her family in tow, praising her grandson for his supposed efficiency. But he just stumbled out of the car bruised and badly beaten. And he blamed it all on Wang Jiao's useless husband Yi Chen. So his father Wang Zhiqiang declared he wanted Yi Chen gone for good, and the grandson asked about calling the police. But the matriarch refused to involve any outsiders in their family business, instead ordering her son to use his friends in the underworld. Later, Yi Chen was ambushed while making a delivery, as two large thugs suddenly blocked his path, and he knew immediately that the Wang family had sent them. So they moved in, aiming to break both of his hands. But the sounds of a one-sided fight echoed through the alley, and it was Yi Chen who walked away completely unscathed. A furious thug then blocked his path again, but Yi Chen dodged a heavy punch while securing the delivery bag, his only real concern being the food inside, and he rode off to complete one last job. At the Wanhao Hotel, a new plot was brewing, where the Wang family matriarch was still enraged, and a special guest arrived for her birthday celebration, which made the cousins spot a golden opportunity. As Mr. Ma Kun, Yi Chen's boss, offered a gift, and he quickly noticed the family's foul mood, so the cousin whispered a poison story into his ear, painting Yi Chen as a violent and ungrateful traitor, and the family claimed they desperately needed his help, revealing that Yi Chen was actually his employee, which caused a wicked smile to spread across Ma Kun's face, as he set a trap, ordering a delivery to the hotel himself. 15 minutes later, Yi Chen arrived as planned, and he called the customer to come and pick up the order. But on the other end, Ma Kun ordered him to come inside, which Yi Chen refused, citing the hotel's strict policy. So the matriarch gave a silent, unspoken command, and Ma Kun agreed to meet him at the front door, a strange request that confirmed Yi Chen's suspicion. As the entire family emerged from the hotel to confront him, a new man appeared demanding he hand over his uniform and badge, and Yi Chen questioned this sudden and unusual order. So the grandson revealed the man was his boss Ma Kun, and Ma Kun pulled out his phone to prove his authority. As a call came through, Yi Chen was officially fired, his quiet plan for a clean exit ruined by this public humiliation. He slowly began to unzip his delivery jacket, while the two men mocked his apparent submission. But Yi Chen flipped the script, asking about Ma's own contract, and the boss froze, shocked that he could know this information. So Yi Chen calmly declared that his contract was now terminated. But Ma Kun just scoffed, boasting of his high-level connections. Suddenly, the matriarch screamed for Yi Chen to kneel before them, accusing him of multiple crimes in front of the whole family. But he just smirked, refusing her command, and she reminded him of a promise he had made years ago. So Yi Chen confirmed that his word was still his bond, and the family called for the legendary dragon ruler. A heavy golden ruler was brought forward on a cushion, as the guests whispered about the brutal punishment to come. And the order was given: 20 slaps to the face. So his father-in-law stepped up, ready to deliver the blows, but another voice suddenly interrupted them, as his wife took the ruler, claiming the right to punish him herself. But Yi Chen just listed her betrayals one by one, and his wife scoffed, sarcastically calling herself a good wife, declaring that only she had the right to discipline her own husband. But the cousin snatched the weapon from her hands and screamed at Yi Chen, threatening to pulp his face, raising the heavy object high, ready to strike him down. But Yi Chen was faster, landing a single devastating blow, and the crowd gasped in total and utter disbelief. The grandmother erupted, threatening him with jail time, but Yi Chen calmly stated he was only defending himself, and a guest accused him of going back on his word. So our boy clarified he would accept punishment, but only if he was truly guilty. And the matriarch listed his crimes: cheating and assault, but Yi Chen denied it all, exposing his wife's affair with Fang Ko, which made the guests begin to whisper about the rumors they'd already heard. So his wife desperately claimed it was just a business meeting, but Yi Chen mocked her excuse, asking if a bathrobe was standard business attire. Suddenly, a guest announced the arrival of young Master Fang, and Fang Ko entered, feigning ignorance about all the chaos. So Jiao begged him to clear her name and confirm her story, and he pulled her close, telling everyone that they were innocent. Then Fang Ko challenged Yi Chen for proof, knowing he had already erased it all, and he began to spin his own tale for the crowd, claiming Yi Chen was his delivery driver and had thrown his food in a rage, and he pointed to a company president, asking him to verify the story. So this man checked his phone, confirming the one-star review was real, and the crowd whispered, judging the son-in-law for his vicious, petty revenge. But Yi Chen demanded an explanation for the dropped food, and she blamed him, calling him weak and unable to handle pressure. He just laughed, realizing he had expected far too much from her. Then old Madame Wang confronted him about another woman, demanding proof of his innocence, and this new accusation left her speechless for a moment. So she dropped the cheating claim but wouldn't forgive him for hurting her grandson, and Yi Chen dared her to call the police citing self-defense, which made the matriarch explode, accusing him of turning against the family. So he offered a truce. If they leave him alone, he'll do the same for them. And then he made his one true request, a divorce. Laughing with rage, she addressed the entire party, claiming she only upheld the marriage for her late husband's dying wish, and she boasted about her granddaughter's beauty and high status. Before the verdict was delivered, Yi Chen was kicked out of the family. A man called for a waiter to bring out celebratory drinks, as the guests toasted, congratulating the family for shedding their trash. Then Wang Jiao's mother Su Lan revealed a deep family secret, announcing to everyone that the marriage was never actually consummated. And Yi Chen watched this final humiliation with an icy calm, seeing their plan clearly. She was just a product to be sold to the highest bidder. He raised his glass sarcastically, congratulating his wife on her freedom, but she offered a final cruel bargain, telling him to kneel and beg, and he scoffed at the very idea of begging his betrayer for anything, swirling the wine in his glass, preparing his final response. He then poured the wine out onto the floor, and she screamed in utter disbelief, complaining to her grandmother that Yi Chen was rebelling against them, and the bruised grandson demanded more than just a simple divorce. So the matriarch addressed the crowd, painting Yi Chen as a villain, and she begged them all to help her destroy his future. The guests whispered amongst themselves, debating if they should get involved. But the young master of the Fang family stepped forward, and he vowed to blacklist Yi Chen from every hotel in the city, smirking as he promised to take his wife and make him crawl. Then a restaurant owner joined in banning him from the entire food industry, and a delivery agent followed, cutting him off from all delivery work. So Yi Chen coolly asked if anyone else wanted to take a turn, and a KTV CEO banned him from all the bars, as Yi Chen just laughed. The grandson then pointed out that Yi Chen could still be a bodyguard, and the crowd agreed no one could control all the rich families. But from the sidelines, someone scoffed at their petty arrogance. A stunning woman in red had arrived completely unnoticed, and one of the businessmen panicked, recognizing her instantly, while another guest asked for an introduction and was mocked for not knowing the vice president of Huasheng Group, as the woman was identified as President Qin Hongyan, who was known to be incredibly powerful, second only to her elusive new boss. Yi Chen's eyes narrowed. He knew her from his own company. And the man continued to flatter her, claiming she controlled all of Yuncheng's elite. This man fumbled his words, trying desperately to flatter President Qin, though he secretly believed she must have used dirty tactics to get her position, and he demanded she ruin Yi Chen, citing their important business deal. Unimpressed by his groveling, she calmly opened a cigarette case and pulled out a single elegant cigarette, and instantly 4 lighters sparked to life around her, as men swarmed in, all desperate to be the one to give her a light. But she ignored them all, her gaze finding someone else in the room. Her eyes locked onto Yi Chen, the only one not fawning over her, and she gave him a simple command, light my cigarette. The crowd was stunned that she would ask this trash for anything at all, but Yi Chen bluntly told her that he didn't have a lighter, which made her admirers outraged at his public refusal. Intrigued by his defiance, President Qin stood up, and she asked for his name, so he pointed out that she should already know it. And a man shouted at his disrespect, but she waved him into silence, getting closer to him, offering him a supposed way out. This offer was for him to become her personal bodyguard, and the guests whispered, certain she had taken a personal interest in him, while Wang Xiaoji's wife watched completely bewildered by the turn of events. A guest then realized the new president of the company was also named Yi, but President Qin claimed the new president's identity was a closely guarded secret, though Yi Chen knew she had no idea who he really was. Her way out was just another public humiliation, for him to kneel and apologize, and in return President Qin offered a lucrative bodyguard position. But the Wangs saw this as a direct attack on their family, and old Madame Wang recognized her as a skilled operator, a woman who knew exactly how to control people. But Yi Chen flatly refused her offer, leaving her stunned by the public humiliation, as his eyes remained cold and resolute, and he leaned in close, repeating his refusal, which made her flinch, completely taken aback by his audacity. Yi Chen feigned innocence, saying she seemed a bit hard of hearing, and she seethed with anger, calling him a fool, declaring war on him, vowing to ruin him completely. His enemies gloated, believing he was finally finished, but Yi Chen calmly questioned her actual authority, and she insisted her words represented the entire company, so he reminded everyone that she is not the president, and the crowd murmured, realizing that he was right. Cornered, she prepared to make a shocking revelation, claiming the new president was actually her lover. And Yi Chen was utterly baffled by this bold-faced lie, but she doubled down, challenging him directly, and the room erupted, believing her story completely. The Wang family celebrated, thinking their deal was now guaranteed, as she asked for secrecy, citing her lover's need for professionalism, but Yi Chen just smirked, seeing right through her desperate excuse. A woman in a pink jacket boasted about her relationship with Yi Chen, but Yi Chen scoffed, calling her a shameless liar. And his wife Wang Jiao demanded a divorce right there on the spot. A man in a vest stopped them, mocking Yi Chen's predicament, as he and another man laughed about humiliating our boy. But Yi Chen's eyes flashed with a cold, dangerous fury. He made a call to the third young master, ordering them to revoke a certain man's delivery agency, and on the other end a butler confirmed the target's identity. So the young master agreed to the command without question, and the call was disconnected, leaving a tense silence hanging in the air. Then the man in the vest erupted in loud laughter, as the other man, President Ma, mocked Yi Chen's empty threat, calling him a worthless and pathetic fantasist, while the woman in pink watched with a calculating gaze. Suddenly, President Ma's phone began to ring. It was President Wu, and the voice on the line delivered some truly shocking news. His agency qualification had been officially revoked, so Ma panicked, trying to salvage the deal with a huge financial offer. But President Wu told him it was over, that the agency was finished. And Ma's mind shattered as the reality of his ruin finally sank in. The call ended, leaving him sweating and utterly desperate. And when a guest asked if the renewal went through, Ma lied. So they toasted to his success as tears streamed down his face. Yi Chen watched as President Ma choked back his tears, and the man tried to play it off, saying the liquor was just too strong. But Yi Chen exposed the lie for everyone in the room to hear, which made President Ma explode, his pride completely shattered. Our boy calmly sipped his tea, unconcerned by the sudden outburst, as guests murmured, wondering if Yi Chen had some kind of hidden power, and the woman in red grew wary, sensing a definite shift in power. But his mother-in-law loudly dismissed the very idea, saying he's just a country boy with no connections at all, and his brother-in-law scoffed at his years of past servitude, so the family matriarch agreed it was simply unbelievable. Meanwhile, President Ma was unceremoniously kicked out of the party, and Yi Chen saw the family's true materialistic nature on full display. An announcement called everyone to the main banquet hall, and he told his wife they would get their divorce right after the meal, so he sat alone at a table waiting for the end. At the table, a small incident was about to unfold. As his spoon touched his sister-in-law's and she recoiled in disgust, he glanced at the bowl of papaya soup in front of her, and calmly suggested that she probably doesn't need it. Furious, she pushed the bowl towards him, and complained to the grandmother, demanding he be thrown out. But the matriarch insisted on keeping her word to let him stay for the meal, and Yi Chen remembered her insistence was what kept his mission alive all those years. He made a quick call, ordering a proper birthday gift to be sent over. Jiao scoffed at the idea of Yi Chen's gift, and she impatiently waited for its arrival. 10 minutes later, a deliveryman appeared at the hotel. But he was stopped by security at the entrance to the private party. So the driver asked whose birthday it was, explaining that a Rolls-Royce owner had sent him, and the cousin's interest was piqued by the mention of the luxury car. He eagerly opened the delivered gift box, and his eyes widened in complete disbelief, for it was a flawless jade bracelet worth millions. The guests murmured, wondering about the wealthy, mysterious sender, while Yi Chen continued eating his meal unbothered by the commotion. The family matriarch had no idea who could have sent it, and the guests tried to guess the mysterious benefactor, so Wang Yunyuan wondered if it was from one of her admirers, and the crowd buzzed with that exciting possibility. Her father proudly agreed with the theory and even accepted congratulations for his daughter's wealthy suitor, but Yi Chen just smirked at their wild and incorrect guesses. He finally stood up from the table and said, "Since my gift is here, let's get divorced." Jiao was stunned, asking what gift he could possibly mean. So he pointed to the beautiful bracelet on the grandmother's wrist, and the father exploded, calling Yi Chen completely shameless. As the family ridiculed him for trying to claim someone else's gift, his wife dragged him away, demanding they go get a divorce now, and he offered a final birthday gift to the family matriarch, but she just screamed at him to stop the act and leave. A relative ordered Yi Chen to crawl out of Yuncheng forever. But Yi Chen calmly stated they have no right to interfere in his life. A luxury car sped past, leaving him standing on the curb, and inside his ex-wife and her companion mocked him, speeding off laughing, telling him to meet them at the bureau. Unfazed by their cruelty, our boy simply hailed a taxi, and soon he arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, where the divorce was finalized and his 3-year ordeal was finally over. His ex-wife sneered at him, calling him discarded trash, but he just turned away, wanting to cut all ties with her. She screamed insults at him as his taxi pulled away from the curb. But she wasn't done yet, ordering her companion to follow him, and the driver smirked, sure that he was fleeing to the train station. After all, they had cut off all his means of survival in the city, but his ex-wife had a nagging feeling that it wasn't that simple, and suddenly the driver realized they were on the wrong road, that it wasn't the way to the airport either, and she realized Yi Chen wasn't leaving the city at all. Her companion scoffed, vowing to block him from any good hotel. But then the taxi stopped right in front of a 5-star hotel, and they watched in utter disbelief as Yi Chen got out, as his ex-wife fumed, seeing this as a direct and personal challenge. This arrogant man, determined to sabotage Yi Chen, made a call, giving a simple, direct order to ensure he wouldn't be hired. But the response he received from the other end was utterly shocking, as his contact revealed that Yi Chen had never even applied for a job. And a new, impossible thought began to take root in his mind. Jiao scoffed at the very idea, claiming she had left him completely penniless, so he decided he had to go and see the truth for himself. Knowing that at the Zizi Lake Hotel the answer was waiting for him, there the manager confirmed that Yi Chen had indeed paid for 7 full nights, prompting an accusation that he must have been hiding money, but there was so much more to the story. As the receptionist clarified, he hadn't just booked a room but the presidential suite. A reservation with a staggering total cost of over 500,000 yuan. The man turned to glare at Jiao, his suspicion growing with every passing second, while she stood there at a complete and total loss for words, and he demanded the staff confirm the impossible sum once more, only to learn that Yi Chen had also left a massive tip on top of it all. Jia Yao erupted into a furious tirade claiming the money had to belong to her family, but her companion was focused on the real question: where did it come from? And she suddenly suspected that Yi Chen must have stolen her grandma's priceless antiques. So he urged her to call her family and check on them immediately. Meanwhile, at a different hotel across town, guests were still buzzing with excitement about the mysterious bracelet donor, and the host of the party was growing more and more impatient, knowing that the generous gift giver should have arrived by now, when a wild possibility suddenly entered her mind. Was it Yi Chen? A woman answered her phone, fully expecting to hear news about a divorce. But it was her frantic daughter on the other end of the line, claiming that Yi Chen had stolen and sold their family's antiques. A woman in red sitting nearby overheard this damning accusation, and as she lit a smoke, she dismissed him as nothing more than a common thief, announcing her departure as she stood up to leave the party, entrusting a major financing deal to a man she called President Chin. The other guests also began to leave their evening, ending in disappointment, while the grandmother began to question the timing of this supposed theft. And the mother explained the basis for their suspicion: that Yi Chen had somehow managed to book a presidential suite for an entire week. Enraged by this news, the grandmother slammed her hand down on the table, ordering her family to search her home from top to bottom for any missing items. A car sped through the night heading towards the Zishan villa, and inside, two relatives agreed to split up to search the rooms more efficiently. 20 minutes later, their frantic search officially began, with one man carefully checking the display cases, finding nothing at all was missing. And they reported back to the family that no valuables had been taken, which seemed to prove that Yi Chen didn't steal anything from the family after all. But the younger man stopped his uncle just as he was about to leave, suggesting that they should probably check just one more time, and he slipped back into the room with a sinister grin spreading across his face, pulling out his grandfather's priceless watch from his own pocket, as he planned to frame Yi Chen for the theft of the valuable heirloom. Bursting out of the room just moments later shouting that the watch was gone, a man received a call confirming Jia Yao's current location, and back at the Zizi Lake Hotel she was getting the bad news that a 5 million yuan watch was now missing from her grandmother's home, and she immediately, without hesitation, blamed Yi Chen for the crime, demanding his room number from the hotel staff so she could confront him. Her companion couldn't help but question her strangely excited expression, and he tried to stop her from making a terrible scene in the hotel lobby, but she just called him a coward and stormed off completely alone. She began pounding furiously on the door of the presidential suite, while inside Yi Chen wondered why his ex-wife would possibly be here, and he opened the door fresh from a shower and wrapped in a towel. Jia was completely stunned by the sight of him, and feeling flustered, she noticed his impressive physique for the very first time, before she finally blurted out her accusation about the stolen watch. He of course had no idea what she was even talking about, so she pointed to the expensive suite as clear proof of his guilt, but Yi Chen denied everything and coldly told her to leave. His formal use of Miss Wang stung her deeply, as she remembered a time when he used to adore her completely, and her anger returned in a rush, accusing him of hiding someone else in the room, so he reminded her they were divorced and threatened to call security. Furious at his cold rejection, she pulled out her phone, warning him of the long prison sentence he would face for grand theft, and she offered him one last chance to save himself, kneel and beg for her forgiveness. He just scoffed, refusing to ever be pathetic for her again. A furious Jaiki arrived, demanding that Yi Chen open the door at once, screaming through the wood that she had already called the police on him. The Wang family matriarch was stunned when she heard this news, as the family argued that this was a matter that should have been handled internally. But the matriarch scoffed, readily accepting Yi Chen's fate in prison. 10 minutes later, the police arrived to question Jayaki, and she laid out her accusation. He stole a watch to fund his stay in this suite. An officer ordered the hotel staff to call Yi Chen and have him come down, but upstairs in his room Yi Chen was already sound asleep, which made Jayaki fume, convinced he was too guilty to even answer the phone, so she decided they would all go up and get him themselves. A sharp knock on the door finally awakened him from his sleep, and Yi Chen opened it looking perfectly calm and composed. The police chief immediately confronted him about the stolen watch, and the chief questioned his background as a poor delivery man, asking how he could possibly afford such a luxurious suite. Yi Chen simply asked them to give him a moment, as he calmly retrieved a document from inside the room, presenting a contract that declared him the new CEO of Huisheng Group. And he even offered an expensive diamond-inlaid business card as further proof. A younger officer whispered to his superior, questioning if it could all be a fake, so the chief asked to verify his identity on the official Sky Eye database. Yi Chen calmly explained his profile was hidden by a friend who happened to be the founder of Sky Eye, and he made a quick call requesting his data be made public for a short time, and a minute later he told them they could check again. The officers ran a new search on the Huisheng Group, and the result that appeared on their screen shocked them. Yi Chen was the CEO. They still wondered if the information could somehow be fake, So Yi Chen decided to end their doubts once and for all by showing them his personal bank account on his phone, where a balance of 10 billion yuan stunned them into silence. He explained that a prenuptial agreement had hidden his true wealth from his ex-wife, and a man this rich would never need to steal a cheap watch. The officer then asked why he would ever marry into the Wang family. And Yi Chen revealed it was an arranged marriage he desperately wanted to keep secret. The police, now completely flustered, promised to protect his privacy, and they apologized profusely for the disturbance before quickly leaving. Downstairs, they informed his ex-wife of his complete innocence, leaving her and her companion in a state of total disbelief. She kept insisting he was broke, but the officers now knew better, and the lead officer stated they couldn't arrest him without any proof, scolding her for speaking so poorly of her ex-husband. She proudly, almost arrogantly boasted about being the one who divorced him, and the younger officer just scoffed at her profound ignorance. She then jealously asked if another woman had been in his room, but the officer confirmed that Yi Chen was completely alone. She smirked, now convinced that he must still be in love with her, while her companion grew suspicious of the officer's sudden and extreme politeness. Her brother called asking if Yi Chen had been arrested yet, and she explained that the police couldn't act without any evidence. The man on the phone was then asked if he had any evidence, and he smirked, knowing he was holding the stolen watch in his hand, his plan now shifting to forge proof that Yi Chen had tried to sell it. An orange-haired woman overheard this entire conversation, looking stunned, and she felt a pang of worry remembering a kinder moment she once shared with him. A man with long hair approached her from behind, putting his arm around her as he tried to make a move, but she slapped him hard across the face without a word, blaming Yi Chen for completely ruining her night. The first man commented on her good looks, which prompted the slapped man to grab him, demanding he put a tail on Yi Chen immediately. The next day at 6 in the morning, the hotel staff looked up from their desks in complete surprise, as Yi Chen emerged from the elevator transformed in a powerful tailored suit, and an employee immediately reported his departure to an unknown party. A taxi began to follow Yi Chen's car as it moved through downtown. And 20 minutes later, he arrived at the Huasheng Group headquarters, looking up at the massive building ready to challenge President Qin. At that very same moment, the long-haired man got the news, and he saw a perfect opportunity to get on Qin's good side. President Qin answered her phone while still in bed, recognizing the caller's voice as Fang Ko, who warned her that Yi Chen was on his way, coming for revenge, but she was unconcerned, trusting her building's formidable security to handle it. He began to panic, revealing that Yi Chen was already upstairs. And then President Qin got another shocking phone call, with this new caller explaining the intruder was a newly rich man, and he feigned deep concern for her personal safety, but she dismissed his worries, promising to check on the situation herself. The man was left blushing as she abruptly hung up on him. President Qin immediately ordered her secretary to come to the office, and 30 minutes later at the Huasheng Group Tower, Secretary Zhou arrived to begin her shift, this woman being Zhou Rongrong, President Qin's personal secretary. The security guards watched her walk by without a second glance, and she found the president's office occupied, ready to confront the intruder. Inside, a man was calmly reviewing documents at the president's desk, and she announced herself as the president's secretary, demanding an explanation. He silently judged her appearance, finding her an odd choice for someone like Qin, and as his mind wandered, she demanded to know why he was there. He finally introduced himself, Yi Chen, the new president of the company. The secretary was stunned, immediately apologizing for her aggressive behavior, but Yi Chen dismissed her, realizing the Wang family was likely behind this disturbance, and he then ordered her to send President Qin to him the moment she arrived. Hiding in the restroom, the secretary called her boss, reporting that the new president was here and wanted to see her immediately. President Qin began to panic, promising to come right away, and her red sports car was soon speeding through the city streets. 10 minutes later, she arrived in the building's main lobby, where her secretary was already waiting to greet her. A woman in pink was summoned to the new president's office, and she noticed the staff buzzing with an unusual level of excitement. So her assistant revealed that the new CEO had finally arrived. The woman scoffed, completely unimpressed by the office gossip, hearing he was supposedly young, around 23, and incredibly handsome. She was stunned by his youth, which was a true rarity for such a high position, and she warned her staff to maintain their professionalism at all times. But her assistant insisted he was a perfect match for her for President Qin, though she dismissed the idea that he came in early just to see her. President Qin smirked, confident that she could handle any man, as her reputation for taming powerful men was legendary within the company, and her subordinates looked on in complete and utter awe. She applied a fresh coat of lipstick, promising to teach the new kid a lesson. And her staff eagerly awaited the promised humiliation. Knowing this was a power play designed to solidify her own authority, she approached the office door, ready for the inevitable confrontation, and introduced herself to the man's back as he faced the window. His profile gave her a strange and unsettling sense of déjà vu, and he put down his documents and began to slowly turn around. Outside, her staff giggled, expecting him to fall for her charms, but the new president was revealed, and it was Yi Chen. Her confidence completely shattered, and she collapsed to her knees in shock. As the onlookers were stunned by this sudden and dramatic turn of events, the office door swung wide open for all to see, and the roles were now reversed. It was she who was kneeling before him. The office staff peeked in screaming at the unbelievable sight. As they found their powerful President Chin on the floor, kneeling before her new boss President Yi, she began to beg for his forgiveness for yesterday's terrible insults, and he leaned in close, reminding her of all the lies she had told. Before pulling her into a sudden, shocking embrace, she was trapped in a mortifying situation in front of her entire staff, and he smirked, finally telling her that she could stand up before ordering her to close the curtains. He reminded her of how she had threatened his entire career, and now he asked how she planned to stop him. She accepted her mistake and awaited her punishment, fully ready to be fired or disciplined for her actions. Her willingness to take responsibility seemed to impress him, and he told her that he wasn't going to fire her. Because in fact she was the only one who had offered him a way out. Moved to tears by his mercy, she pledged her complete and undying loyalty. But he clarified she was forgiven but the others were not. He tasked her with gathering intelligence on all of his enemies, and she understood that a major power play was about to begin. 30 minutes later, a detailed file was on his desk, and he began to review the information on a man named Fang Ko. Hongyan reported that the Fang family's wealth had completely collapsed, and she vowed to cut all ties with the Wang family for their poor judgment. But President Yi insisted on separating business from his personal grudges. President Chin then offered to go and get a document for him. Meanwhile, a rival wondered if Yi Chen had been caught by the police yet, when a woman approached him calling him young Master Fang, and she reminded him of a night they had once spent together. He scoffed, internally remembering that she worked at Huisheng Group. And deciding she might be useful, he listened as she claimed President Chin was in danger. 1 minute later, they arrived together on the executive floor, where he overheard employees gossiping about someone kneeling in the office. Fang Ko demanded to know where President Chin was, and he ignored the receptionist storming past her desk, throwing open the office door without knocking. Inside, he found Yi Chen standing with the president, and he accused Yi Chen of hiding in the office to plot his revenge, offering to throw the trash out for her himself. A sharp slap suddenly echoed through the room, as President Chin furiously demanded he call her by her proper title. He was stunned, realizing no one else seemed surprised by Yi Chen's presence, and Fang Ko came to a wild conclusion. Yi Chen was here to be a bodyguard. Connecting the gossip he heard to Yi Chen begging for the job, he mocked our boy for crawling back after refusing the initial offer. And he reminded President Chin that she had promised to destroy Yi Chen. An assistant standing outside overheard this shocking claim, and an enraged President Chin slapped him again for his blatant lies, ordering security to throw him out of the building immediately. Humiliated, Fang Ko was dragged away by the guards, and the rival threatened to ruin Yi Chen's life as he was pulled away, walking away from the building fuming with rage. In his car, he seethed with an uncontrollable anger, and he decided to tell the Wang family everything that had happened. 1 hour later at the Wang family villa, he reported the news to the family matriarch, leaving the entire family stunned and completely outraged. He lied, claiming that Yi Chen had knelt and begged for the job, and the ex-wife Wang Jiaqi listened to this in utter disbelief, before she exploded with a jealous anger. Realizing he knelt for another woman but had never once knelt for her, her sister-in-law began to mock her mercilessly for it, and the couple joked about how they would have treated him in her place. Jiaqi now regretted being too kind to him during their marriage, and she demanded her grandmother cut all business ties with Qin Hongyan. The matriarch snapped back, reminding her of their 70 million yuan deal, and her father had to admit that President Chin was far more capable. Jiaqi threw a tantrum, threatening to go to the company herself, so the patriarch ordered a direct call to be made to Qin Hongyan. The matriarch spoke with President Chin, offering Yi Chen to her as if he were property, and she accused Qin Hongyan of breaking her promise to ruin him. Qin Hongyan offered a polite but completely hollow apology, while the matriarch offered Yi Chen as a gift from the family. Qin Hongyan then said that President Yi was interested in their project, and she offered to arrange a face-to-face meeting between them. The matriarch then warned her son Zhiqiang, and he asked if they should drop the theft accusation now, but she refused, demanding they find evidence to use as leverage. A grandson arrived with what he claimed was a new lead, and the matriarch believed Yi Chen was now unprotected and vulnerable, so she scolded the rest of her family for being so useless. Her verbal attack landed squarely on a red-haired woman, who, feeling humiliated, stormed out of the villa, speeding down the road while vowing to get her revenge on Yi Chen. Her car screeched to a halt inside a parking garage, and from her window she saw a truly shocking sight, as Yi Chen stood with the powerful and influential Qin Hongyan.